Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of Keeping an Eye on the Geopolitical Ball with me, Jamie Shea, Senior Fellow at Friends of Europe in Brussels. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been tracking a lot of crises and conflict situations which have been degenerating, such as the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, or last week, the growing tensions between China and Taiwan. But this week, I'm happy to report on one of these rare instances where a conflict seems to be on the mend and prospects for peace are actually improving. I'm talking about the deal that the United Nations managed to broker in Geneva last Friday between the different warring factions in Libya, and which offer the possibility of peace finally breaking out in that country, which has been subjected to all kinds of conflicts and suffering since the fall of the Gaddafi regime during the Arab Spring in 2011. The Geneva Agreement last Friday provides, for example, for a permanent ceasefire and the withdrawal of the different militias and forces back to their barracks. It provides for the withdrawal of all foreign forces within 3 months, and those foreign forces have played a considerable role in the fighting in Libya. They've come from Chad, they've come from Syria, they've come from Sudan, they've come from Russia, and indeed many mercenaries from Europe have been involved as well. The deal also provides for a political dialogue to start very soon in Tunisia. It provides also for the restarting of the oil production facilities in Libya, which have always been the country's main source of revenue. The hope is that within the next couple of months, oil production can go back up to about 800,000 barrels a day, and over time back to the original level of 1.6 million barrels a day. And this week, for the first time in 8 months, an oil tanker was able to visit Libyan ports and load some oil. The deal also provides for the various militias in the country to eventually be federated and joined into some kind of national security force. And a police monitoring centre is going to be set up to oversee how progress develops in that particular area. One thing which is good about this deal is it's very comprehensive. Unlike the previous arms embargo, which never seemed to work, it covers a large number of areas and offers something positive for all of the various parties. Now, of course, people will be skeptical, as we always have to be, unfortunately, when it comes to an initial peace agreement. Will the great powers that have been so much involved in Libya in recent times actually agree to withdraw and stop trying to influence what's going on, or to advance their rather narrow national interest? The fact that, for example, President Erdogan threw cold water on the deal as soon as it was signed is not very encouraging. Will those militias that felt that they were not involved in the negotiations agree nonetheless to go along with it? Will the parties not accept a ceasefire simply as a chance to regroup and rearm, ready for the next round, but actually as a way out of the Libyan imbroglio? But nonetheless, despite these obvious hesitations, there is still a ray of hope. And I think for the United Nations, there's a lesson here too. UN mediation, UN conflict resolution has not been having a very good time recently. Look at the fruitless efforts, for example, of the United Nations to put a stop to the conflict in Syria. Look also at the relative absence of the UN from many conflicts around Europe, such as in Nagorno-Karabakh, or the plight of the Rohingya Muslims, for example, in Myanmar more recently. The Security Council has been rather deadlocked and not even been able to come together to deal with the coronavirus. But this is, again, a ray of hope, not just for Libya, but also for the role of the UN. And I think there are some very brief lessons that can be learned here. Number one, the conflict resolution works best when there's a stalemate, when neither side can hope to have a military advantage or can ultimately prevail. That's not the case, unfortunately, in Syria or Nagorno-Karabakh, where one side still believes, obviously, it can win. So how do we produce a military stalemate that pushes the parties to the negotiating table? Number two, civil society is still alive and present. So there is pressure from civil organizations upwards on the governments and warring factions to make peace. Number three, there's the prospect of all sides benefiting from the resumption of economic activity. Number four, there is the active participation of a major power, in this case Germany, which has been able to support the UN and use its influence in bringing the sides around the conference table recently in Berlin. And number five, the persistence and perseverance of the UN, particularly in this instance, the UN Special Envoy to Libya, Stephanie Williams, who's done a very fine job of not losing patience, offering the parties an equitable deal, working on the principles for peace, and just by slogging away, waiting for the right opportunity to arise. So in conclusion, does the Libyan peace mean that the UN is now going to be solve every conflict? Clearly not. But one success story at least proves that this is not mission impossible, and providing the Libyan peace holds, the UN will be encouraged to extend its efforts further afield. Thank you very much for watching this week. Always a pleasure to be able to speak to you. Look forward to seeing you again this time next week. Bye for now.